Nobody knows you better than you. So why not trust in your own self? You're listening to episode 135 on the Air Hug Community Podcast. Well, hello there. I am Judy Arizosa, and as I just mentioned, this is the Air Hug Community Podcast. I'm so glad you tuned in to listen today. If you're new here, this is a podcast all about the second half of life, aka midlife and beyond. And I created this podcast so that we could talk about what it's like and how different it is from, let's just say, the first few phases of life. And this chapter is just filled with opportunity to have an exciting, wonderful life. And so listen in. I hope that you will glean some just information that helps you go forward loving life. Today we're going to talk about, I'm going to call it part 2 of our trust series, and there's only 2 parts. But the first part was episode 133, and this is episode 135, and we've got a special guest coming on to talk specifically about self-trust. So hang on, let's go.
People need to know that they can do better no matter what their age.
3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Air Hug Community Podcast. Today, we have a guest who I'm super excited to talk about. Kim has a very interesting account on Instagram, and that's how we kind of met, so to speak. But it's interesting because I really feel like a lot of these people I've met who are in a very similar niche to what I'm in, hello, midlife, I find to be the most interesting people. And so I really wanted Kim Cook to come on today and talk to us. We're going to talk today about trust. But first, let me do a quick introduction because I think you'll find Kim to be very interesting. In many ways, she is very much like the iconic person that I speak to and who I try to help. And so Kim is a wife, a mom, a huge animal advocate. She has grown children. She's been married 39 years. And she also works full-time in corporate with a hybrid between work from home and work at the office. Kim also has gone through something very, I'm going to say, life-changing in the last few years. And Kim, if you'd like to come on and say hello, you can take it from there, and I'll interject with questions if that's okay.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me, Judy. I really, really appreciate it. Yes, I'm a wife and a mom, and I did in 2021 got the most unsettling diagnosis I could have ever imagined. I was having a lot of back pain and shoulder pain, and then I suddenly got some numbness in my arm. And in my thinking, I went to the chiropractor, and that was not it. So it kept getting worse and worse. And finally, I went to my own PCP, and he told me that I had some extreme weakness in my left side. And so let's get an MRI. So we got an MRI, and they immediately turned it over to a neurosurgeon here in Nashville. And his office called and said, you need to pack a bag and be ready to go in the hospital tomorrow. That was December of 2021. December 3rd, I entered the hospital. There was a lesion on my back where they diagnosed a plasmacytoma, which is the grouping of the cells, the plasma cells. So something caused that, and that ultimately finding that led to the diagnosis of multiple myeloma blood cancer. I spent 13 days in the hospital, underwent a 13 and a half hour spinal fusion surgery to remove that lesion and fix that area. I have a cage, and I have a beautiful little 4-rung ladder running down the back of my neck that you can see when they do x-rays. That's what it looks like. It looks like a 4-rung ladder.
Oh my.
And some screws and all that stuff. So that started my journey, and I got the multiple myeloma diagnosis on January the 4th. I opted to go to Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center here. And February of 2022, I started treatment, and today I'm in remission.
Yay.
Yay.
Wow. But
It's
what a
been
journey you
quite
have
a
had.
journey. Yes. Yeah. And it was really, so part of what we want to talk about is trust. And so I had never met this neurosurgeon. I did look him up when they said that's who they had given my file to. And I thought, okay, he looks like he knows what he's doing. He's got all the right credentials and all of those things. And so the first night I was in the hospital, I didn't see him because he was in surgery. However, at 11 o'clock that night, I get this little knock on the door, and there's this tiny little man standing at my door, and it's the surgeon. And he said, I did not want you to go to sleep tonight without knowing exactly why you are here.
Oh my
And
goodness.
from there, I was sold. So I just was, my husband says I was eerily calm, and I was very calm, but I listened, to what they had to say. And then of course I had my computer with me, so I go back and do my research and make my list of questions. I trusted them, but I also needed to have more information for myself so that I could ask the question, are you sure? Is this the route we want to go? Those kinds of things. So it just, self-advocacy, I think, really helped me get through all of this.
And it's interesting that it's such a new world now. We bring our computers to the hospital and we do our research, but how did you, he made a really good first impression, by the way. That's amazing that, this was such a caring individual to put himself in your shoes and think, how can we we can't let this person go to sleep and not understand the reason she's here, I just love that. That's wonderful. But how did you, over this journey, and the reason that the whole idea for this episode came about was because you put a beautiful post up and you asked your audience about trust. And with being in one of your audience, I'd love to follow your page. I know that we follow each other. I thought, oh, Kim, that is so interesting. Like trusting in your heart. Like, how did you know? What were the tools that you used to help nurture that trust?
I am by nature pretty calm, and I am also, my husband and my friends all say this, I choose my words wisely. So I don't make a habit of saying things that I don't truly believe in. And I just have, my dad was in the service, so I moved around a lot as a kid. So I had to be, I had to trust that, okay, the next place we're going to move, am I going to have friends or am I not going to have friends? So I kind of learned to be kind and to be kind to myself, and it's just a belief I have in myself. I trust that I don't trust everybody. That's not what I'm saying. But if you show me like the doctor did, I have a reason to trust you in the moment. And so, and he would tell me things and I would, look them up, and there was plenty of stuff to back up exactly what he was saying. So that helped me build trust with him. He did, however, make one mistake. So he told me that I was going to have some test. I can't even remember now what it was. And then another set of doctors came in and they said, well, no, we've decided you're not going to have that test. And I was like, okay, that does not work for me, because I need him to tell me that we're not going to have that test and why. So I tracked him down. I called him on his cell phone. I said, look, I'm going to do a whole lot better if you just tell me the information that I need to know, but it needs to come from you. If you tell me one thing, I don't want to hear something different from another doctor. And he was like, okay. And so every day after that, he called me on his way home from home. He would say, okay, what questions do you have today? Did you see any doctors that gave you information that you weren't comfortable with? And so,
yeah. And was it a teaching hospital? So did you have like a crew of, no?
It's not a teaching hospital. Vanderbilt is a teaching hospital. Centennial, where I was for the surgery, is not a teaching hospital.
Oh, okay. Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. Well, and they were so good there. The nurses and everyone was so good there. They would just share information. And, I saw very young nurses doing a really, really great job and asking all the questions. And I have a tendency to, I'm nice to everyone unless you give me cause not to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just really nice, and they hung out in our room.
Oh.
They would come because people were bringing us food and we'd have too much food and we'd say, come get this. We're not going to eat it. And so they just, really liked us. So we kind of developed that rapport with them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I trusted them. I trusted that if I got some misinformation, that they were going to help me get the right information. So
Nice.
yeah, it was very interesting. And then so I had to even go down another path with trusting people because I had no idea. The oncologist that they wanted me to use was also associated with Centennial. And he came in our room, my husband and I were there, and he started talking about multiple myeloma. This was before we even knew that
You know
that's what
what?
it was. And he was very doom and gloom. And I don't do that. I don't do doom and gloom. I'm just like, I want the possibilities. I don't want all the negative. So
Mm-hmm.
he left the room, and my husband and I looked at each other, having been married 39 years, and we both go, no way. No way is he going to be your oncologist. And I
Okay.
was like, you're right. He's not.
It was not a
So
match. Yeah.
it was not a match. So I had a friend who used to work at Vanderbilt, and she was the head of oncology nursing and taught the nurses and things about the drugs that they have for multiple myeloma and different blood cancers and things like that. So she had retired, but I called her and she said, yes, we had a new oncologist, hematologist come in, and he is amazing. So that's who I met with, and we hit it off from the start. I just told him, I said, look, I just need the information. I need it in the form that I can understand it. And I need you to let me ask questions, and you need to answer them. He was like,
So
okay.
it sounds to me like when you met with oncologist number one, I'm going to call that person, that you in your heart knew that that was not the kind of person you were going to trust, not the
Yeah,
kind
there
of
was no
person you were
way.
going to jive with. And it sounds to me like you actually trusted what your heart was telling you.
Yes.
You know,
Yes,
heart,
very much
soul, I don't
so.
know what you want to call it, but you trusted your intuition to be, and it's so interesting that your husband, and I do think, being together probably longer than not at this point, right?
Yes.
Yeah, is, you know each other well. That's amazing to me that you had enough faith in your intuition, and to me that's self-trust, which
Yes.
I really feel like a lot of people struggle with. And
Yeah, I think that, and we saw that every day when we were in the hospital. When I was not in the hospital, when I was going for treatment at Vanderbilt,
mhm.
I was one of the younger people that I saw, and I kept asking myself, how do they do it? And how do they, because Vanderbilt would mess up my appointments, and I'd have to call and go, no, this is not what we discussed with the doctor. You've got to fix this. This is not what I'm doing.
Mhm.
I just kept thinking about how do they do it? And I felt, they don't trust anybody, most of the older people, because some of them were very old and very sick. And I just like, I don't want to be there. I don't want to be there. I want to be able to ask my questions. I want to, trust that they're giving me the information. And I think by always, when they would tell me the drugs that I was going to take, what did I do? I went home and I immediately looked them up. They would
Mhm.
give me sheets on them, but I also looked them up. I went to the manufacturer of the drugs and then went to different sites. And multiple myeloma has some really great sites, multiplemyeloma.org and the International Multiple Myeloma Foundation. They have a lot of information out there. So I would just, I just would scratch my head going, how do they not? They just let these people do whatever they want, and they don't lead with their heart or lead with questions or lead with trust. It's just,
Mhm.
it's just like, I'm just not, I can't do that. I just can't let I need to know. I need to know for myself that
So,
we're headed down the right path.
so I wonder, and I don't know if this is the case or not, but I wonder in general, looking back at like when my parents were older and sick, just a different generation, is that they were more willing to accept whatever they heard. If someone in a white coat said it, that would be it, and they wouldn't question it. And I don't know if that's either maybe the way my parents were, or if that's a product of their generation.
I think it's a product definitely of their generation for sure. And I think too that that was, just because someone has a white coat on, they are not God. They are not the universe, whatever it is you believe in. And it's okay to ask them questions. It's okay to say, why are you choosing this path for me? You know,
Mm-hmm.
when he told me what treatment I was going to have, it's called BRD, which is Revlimid pills, chemotherapy drugs, and then I took dexamethasone and I took Velcade shots. So the Velcade shots and the Revlimid are the two chemo drugs, and then dexamethasone is a prednisone derivative. So I said, why? Why are we doing that one? Because there's different protocols out there. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, well, he said, it is the most trusted. It has been used the most. And he said, because you just had that small spike and just the plasmacytoma, he said, I just really feel like this is the path that you need to take. And I said, okay. And I said, I'm going to go home and research this and I'm going to have questions. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, yeah, I know.
Just the
So
fact that you could spit all that out now tells me that, okay, you're very well read. You have done your homework.
I've done my homework. I've learned more about multiple myeloma and blood cancers and all sorts of things and how hospitals work and don't work. And as a project manager in the corporate world, in the legal corporate world, it was all I could do some days at Vanderbilt not to go, do you people not know how this should run? I should not be here for 4 hours for a shot that takes 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just but we would just we would pack a bag and take snacks and take stuff to read and you just be prepared. And some of those people don't do that, the people that were going to the infusion center, and they would just sit there for hours.
Oh, that
And
breaks
I'm
my
just
heart.
like, I know it broke my heart. And I'm just like, I can't do all this. So I'm so glad to be done. And I did have I thought I was done in August when I had stem cell transplant.
Mm-hmm.
But after stem cell, they did another PET scan. And where I had the plasmacytoma and the fusion on my back, they they needed something for stability of the cage that they put in. And so they left a little tiny piece of the plasmacytoma and it was still lighting up my PET scan.
Yeah.
So I had to do a second round of radiation treatments, more targeted and more and stronger to that area specifically. And of course, I won't know the results of that until April. They wait 90 days after you're done to tell you, but they're pretty confident. Sorry, they're pretty confident that they got it. And that's another person, the radiation oncologist. I asked him 1,000 questions,
Mm-hmm.
and he really, when he had to tell me that we didn't get it all, I just said, okay, then you need to give me some really good reassurances that what we're going to do next is going to get this. And he goes, I really truly believe that that's the case. He said, if it's not, he said, you are a total anomaly because I
Oh,
had the chemo treatment, then I had the first little round of radiation, and then I had stem cell transplant and it didn't get it. And he said, most people that would have been gone. So I still have that little bit of scare factor, but I'm really not letting it run my life at this
mm-hmm.
point. I'm, doing all the things I'm supposed to do. When I saw my surgeon a few weeks ago, he told me that I hadn't seen him in a while. So he walks in the room and he's just got the best bedside manner. He's like, oh my gosh, you look fantastic. You're a miracle. And he goes,
Wow.
most people do not walk in here after only a year and look the way you do. And I was like, okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. He said, tell me what you've been doing. So I told him, I said, well, I went back to exercising as soon as I could. And of course I watched my nutrition and all of those things. And he said, you need to write a book for people, a roadmap on how to deal with this type of cancer and this type of surgery. He said, because he didn't tell me this before, and I'm glad he didn't, but he said, yours was the second hardest surgery I have ever performed.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like, thank you for not
Not
telling me
telling
that.
me. Yeah. More
Yeah.
reasons to trust him.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
But
yeah,
what
more
I would like
reasons.
to speak to about you is it's not that you, like the old people, you gave over blind trust. You do your research, you ask the questions, and then you make the decision. You trust yourself ahead of others, and then they earn your trust.
Yes. And the one thing that everyone tells me, both the doctors have told me, all of the doctors have told me, is that that I ask good questions, that I don't, I'm not asking it off the cuff, and I'm not they can tell I've done some research. So I'm asking because I had asked my oncologist potentially about doing immunotherapy as opposed to the drug therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, he said, there's just really not enough science about it. And he said, people are dying in trials. And he said, I just don't think that we're there yet with immunotherapy for blood cancers.
Okay.
So I came home and he was right. I looked it up and the science is there. They're making some progress. And I think they've made a lot of progress, since my diagnosis even. So I think that, someday that will be the choice for some people, is to
Mm-hmm.
immunotherapy versus drug therapy. So it's just I believe in myself. I believe in the universe and God. I'm both. I believe there's a universe, and I believe that there's some powerful being out there, that whatever you believe is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just have to, just to get through the day. Sometimes, you have to just trust yourself. You have to say, okay, I'm eating this because I know that this is good for me. I'm going for a 45-minute walk because I know that this is good for me. I'm doing the things that I trust are going to help me. So
And then, right.
it's
And
just,
then, so you're controlling what you can control.
mhm.
You're doing,
And not going down the black hole
yeah.
if I can't control it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
See, just like with the remaining thing on my back, I'm just not, it does not define my day.
I love that. Right. Instead
Well,
of
thank you.
victimizing yourself, you're focusing on what you can do. And there you are, drinking your water. And
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
no,
and
absolutely. We do. So for people who are listening, I always like to do, when I'm having a chat with someone, I like to keep the camera on because I really feel like body language comes into play quite a bit. And it just, we can just kind of, even like knowing when it's time to speak or not. But anyways, so I've got my water over here too. I just
yeah, I'm
haven't
a
popped it
bit
open yet.
lots of water most days. And there was something I was going to say, and mm, it'll probably come back to me. But I don't let, all of this. Oh, I know. One of the things that always has run through my mind, my mother died when she was 58. She had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And and I haven't said this out loud in a really long time, so I might get a little teary. I always felt like she gave up.
Mm,
She gave in too soon. And I also believe that that's a driving factor for me, because I was not going to do it. I've got a 26-year-old and a 29-year-old, and I want to see their lives. And I'm going to do all the things that I'm supposed to do because I want to be here. And life is so important. And it just, our world is in terrible turmoil right now, and I understand that, but that doesn't stop me from being kind. It doesn't stop me from doing what is right. It doesn't stop me from any of that stuff because
No.
that's what I believe.
And I think whatever story you feed your brain,
Amen.
is going to actually determine, what you're doing now definitely has an effect on what happens to you later. And I'm a big believer, a strong believer in the beliefs that we hold on to within ourselves have a lot to do with what happens in our future. If we think that we're going to become old and senile, that's a crazy word, but you know what I mean? If we give up like you feel maybe your mom did, I do feel that like my dad did as well at the end, but he was in some ways he died of a broken heart because he missed my mom. He missed his wife. And he told us, he said, I'm really ready. He's like, I miss her too much. It's time. And that was his time. And of course, having made a decision, it's not like that night he fell asleep and passed away. Of course, our higher power has a much different timeline than what we have, which is
Yes.
sometimes one of those things we can't control. But I do think what we can control is what we feed our brain. And if we feed and this does sound, I know, like all rosy and cute and everything, but I don't mean it to be that way. But we don't have to, like you say, go down the negative rabbit hole when we don't know if that's a fact. Versus, I love how you advocated for yourself. You did the research, so you were prepared to ask the questions in such a way that you understood what was happening and why your path was what it had to be.
Yeah. I really do. I really am glad that I did that. And my husband, he let me, because, whenever they messed up my appointments, I was the one that was having to fix it. And he just let me handle that because he gets a little more excited than I do. So, I just, he just let me handle it. He's like, you just do what you need to do. And I'm here for support. He was a total caregiver the entire time, still is to this day. And I expected him to do great. I didn't expect him to do exceptional. So it just kind of blew me away because, being very independent and healthy, by the way, just as a little side note, that's the first time I have ever had major surgery. First time I've ever been in the hospital for any extended time other than having kids. First time I'd ever been intubated.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then to spend 13 and a half hours under. So I, and I think if I hadn't been calm and I hadn't been trusting of Dr. Lockney, the surgeon, I don't know, it might have been a completely different outcome. And thank goodness that I was okay with all of everything that was going on. Because I literally went into the hospital on the 3rd. I did not have surgery until the 10th. So all that time I was having bone marrow biopsies and MRIs and CT scans and blood work and just on and on and on and on. They were just trying to figure it out. And I knew that's what they were doing. And I was like, okay, we have to get this figured out because life has to go on.
So when you had the surgery, you did not have the diagnosis yet.
I did not, but they knew that the plasmacytoma was caused by something. And there had been mention a few times of blood cancers and multiple myeloma, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I'm going to add a little side note here. Multiple myeloma is typically found in males 65 years or older. I was 59 at the time of my diagnosis, and African American males at that. However, I'm sure people who are going to be listening to this have seen the Camp Lejeune water lawsuit that's all over television because the naval base at Camp Lejeune was poisoning the water from 1950 something to 1987. They were dumping stuff in the water. And I lived at Camp Lejeune as a child in 70 and 71.
Oh my goodness.
And so they believe, the VA believes, and the Navy, all of them believe that that's where I probably got multiple myeloma, was from the water.
And so it just didn't turn on in your system until you I want to use the word dormant, but maybe that's not the right word.
Yeah, I don't really know
I don't
why or
understand.
how,
Yeah.
but there's 8 in the government has stepped in and said, okay, the Navy has to pay. You have to pay for these people who have these 8 diseases, and multiple myeloma is one of them. So I have gone through all of the paperwork, got them all of my records, done all the things that they've asked me to do. And right now, the Veterans Administration is like my secondary insurance.
Okay.
So whatever my primary doesn't pay, they pick up.
They will
So
pick up.
yeah, as long as it's related to the multiple myeloma, out of their mouth came the words, "You will never come out of pocket for multiple myeloma."
Wow.
So and it's just, I didn't think about it. My sister called me and she said, "Kim, you've got to look into this," because, we live there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Can you refresh my memory? Where is that?
Camp Lejeune is in North Carolina,
Thank
Jacksonville,
you.
North Carolina.
Okay.
So my dad was a Marine, and we were stationed there, and we, lived there, and I swam in the pool, and I took, my swim test there, and I went to school there. So we were drinking the water from
You
the
were in the
water
water, yeah.
fountains. Yeah, I mean, just all the things. And the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma that my mother had is also on that list.
On that list. Holy
Yeah.
Toledo. Wow.
So
this is definitely going in a different direction, but it's okay. Having to do all that, I almost feel like that could be a part-time job in and of itself.
Yes, it has been, having to collect records and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I just trusted that they were going to do the right thing. Now, whether they will or they won't, we'll see, because part of it has been taken care of, but we'll see. There's also a big lawsuit out there as well. So we'll see what they do with that.
What they do with it.
Yeah.
So, and am I allowed to say, like, you have a legal background, and sometimes I wonder if this is just me speculating, the whole higher power thing, like they're going to make that your profession, because later in life, you're going to need to have those organizational and thought-provoking skills where you question these things, because it's serving you so well right now. I always just kind of think like that's like a foreshadowing, like, okay, you're going to need that skill later in life, but this is going to be your career now. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I do think that it's definitely going to take organization, because I have intended to retire a little sooner than I'm going to, and we'll see how all that plays out. But one thing, being in the legal world, I take really good notes, and when you call them on it, they're like, "Oh, I guess I did say that."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you did, because I wrote it down.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm a project manager. I write down the name of every person I talk to. I write down the date. I write down what was discussed and where we left it and what you were going to do and what I was going to do. And so I've really stayed on them and had to. I can't imagine some of these people out there who have these diagnoses and were there at Camp Lejeune, how they're getting all their stuff. I don't know how they're getting all their stuff done. I just don't.
Who's advocating for them if they don't?
Yeah.
I mean, like, you are really exceptionally well at self-advocation. It's very interesting. My sister, who has also gone through a cancer diagnosis, is what I would consider exceptionally good at advocating for herself as well. She was actually a guest on our podcast on episode number 2, believe it or not, way back. And I don't even know if we talked about that back then. I'm hearing a lot of the same things about how, well, she asked the questions, how you even knew the questions to ask, and how to stay on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole thing is all about trust. I mean, I trust myself probably, especially more than I trust the government. Sorry, government, I hope you're listening. Because
you've got skin in the game. What does the government care, right?
Exactly.
I mean, this is your life.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. I mean, it's you for them, it's like just another person. You're another number in their system. But for you, this is your story, your life. So,
Yeah.
but it's such a good thing for the rest of us to hear. And, so this is a podcast for midlife women. We all really need to listen to your example because, we could wake up tomorrow and need to be advocating for ourselves and learning what are the things that we need to do in order to trust the people who are putting our care in their hands.
Yes, I agree. I totally, totally agree. So one of the things that we say in I started saying in the cancer, and I found that I hear it a lot in the cancer world, is that nothing is the same every day. And in the cancer world, you can always expect the unexpected because it never quite goes exactly how you think it's going to go. And you can't go down that rabbit hole.
Mhm.
You just can't. Okay, this is how it's going today, so we're going to punt and we're going to go this way, or we're going to do something different, or we're going to call the doctor and say, hey, I got this going on, is that okay? Just having to make those choices all the time with my best interest at heart. That's what I need to know. Is this okay? Is it not okay? What should I be doing? What shouldn't I be doing? Those kinds of things. And I think
Yeah.
that is really important for all of us. And even I hope there's, younger people listening, and I'm sure there are. You need to start early. You just need to start early. Get in the habit of doing what is best for you, not to the detriment of others, but that in your gut, this is what I need to do.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that because especially when we're younger, we have that, like, it's not that important. Oh, I'm not gonna get old and get sick. But, well, first of all, you're not even old. And the fact of the matter is, at some point, something's going to get us, whether it's, I don't want to get, I mean, whether it's a train or an illness or whatever, but you're right. We do need to be prepared, and
Yes, and be
which
prepared
always,
to, ask.
one of the things, like, to your credit, and you talk about this and write about this, is that you have beautiful, healthy lifestyle habits. You eat well, you cook well, you move, you hydrate, you sleep, and these are all priorities that I've seen you talk about and read about, and that's pretty much what we talk about all the time in Grateful Fitness and the Air Hug community. I guess we cannot overstress it,
No, and I'm a firm believer that had I not been in good health, it could have been a completely different outcome. Because like I was talking about the people in the infusion center, I had fight left in me. And some of them, I don't think they just don't have that.
Yeah.
They're either overweight or they smell like cigarettes. They have cancer, but they smell like cigarettes. Just the things and it's not that hard to do the things that you should do. Drink your water, make sure you get enough sleep, make sure you're eating, plenty of fruits and vegetables and, whole grains, and believer in no carbs. I'm a believer in maybe eating lower carbs, but not no carbs. So there's just so many little things. You take a walk, take a bike ride, do something you enjoy. If it's dancing, yoga, whatever it is, just do it because it's in the long run, it's going to serve you well.
Exactly. And I'm so glad to hear other people saying that, and just, this is normal, and there again, I've said this before, just based on my experience with the older generation that grew up around me, they kind of suffered from the convenience of modern life versus what their parents did, so my parents came from Italy, so their parents they did walk everywhere, they made their own food, everything was from scratch, and my mother was a fabulous cook, but she had 8 children and her own mother living in our house. And so she did the best she could. I mean, literally her movement was, a gazillion flights of stairs a day between laundry and cooking and, everything. But I feel like other than that, it was a sedentary life. They suffered
Yeah.
from the modernization, I think, that their parents didn't suffer from. I don't know. And I think it's the attitude too. I saw a different
Yeah,
attitude.
definitely attitude. Yeah. And I
Mhm.
think too, for our generation, I think part of what um got us a little off track was the coming of the low fat diet and replacing the fats with things that we can't pronounce, and we don't even know what some of them, I still don't know what they are, and I have a nutrition degree. It's just
Yeah,
like I don't know what that is.
same.
I'm not, if I can't read it, it's like I'm not going to eat it.
I have a
So
term for
I think
that.
what is that?
I call it a chemical shitstorm.
Yeah,
If these
that's
things that
exactly
are
right.
these things with long shelf lives that are, like when margarine became a thing and all that fake
Ugh.
butter with the fancy names and the fake sugars, I call them all chemical shitstorms. And I'm
No, I was just to say, and it changed, the way even my husband and I, fed our kids. So because all that was out there and it was supposed to be the new science and all this other stuff. And then when it started to go bad, it's like, oh, gosh, I wish I'd have done this so, sooner, looking at all these things and
yeah,
changing my plate. But we did that, and now my youngest son in particular, he is more health oriented and doesn't eat a lot of junk food, and he reads labels and loves to cook and all those things, so he knows he's controlling what he's putting on his plate.
yeah,
So it just all this. So now, had the low fat diet come now into our lives, I think I'd have been doing a lot more research on it before I ever dove into that. Because I did eat, some of the low fat things that they had on the market and stuff like that, and wishing I hadn't, but I did. So there you go.
agree. Yes, I remember buying fat-free cream cheese. God knows what was in it. I don't really know what was in it. I
No,
can't even look
I
at it
don't buy
now.
fat free.
Yeah, no, I don't buy. I don't do it. I don't buy. Everything is real now. We here. It's like we try to live it. I don't grow and shoot my food, but I try to consume things that I could only grow or shoot. You know,
Right.
so
And that's pretty much what we do.
yeah. Are we
And then
100% at it? No, but we're very
no,
close. Yeah.
no, I did hear the other day, this was interesting. One of the cancer calls that I was on, they have changed again in our nutrition world, that they have, they don't want you to eat a lot of red meat. I get that. So they've grouped red meat in with pork and something else. And they've said now that you should have no more than 18 ounces a week. And then everything else should be chicken or fish or stuff like that.
Or
So I
plant
thought that
based.
was really interesting. I don't even eat 18 ounces in a week ever. So, but and I try to eat lots of fish and things like that. Just the things, good things that I know, like the things that you can grow. Now I am big on, I like quinoa and things like that. So, that anyway, we have gone off the rails here.
It's okay. That happens. Yeah. Well, a lot of what it gets down to is not only are we what we eat, we are also what our food eats. So,
Right. I agree.
right. So, what was in the water that your food grew in, when you were on that Marine base, right? When you were on base, what
Right.
was, right? It's not only what you ate, but it's what your food ate. And,
Right.
sometimes that's all it takes is just to remember that. And, I'm not an advocate for anyone like one diet. I won't get into the diet wars, this one versus that one versus that
Mm-mm.
one. But I'm like, are you getting, adequate protein? Are you getting your vegetables? Are you getting your fiber? Are you getting your water? And please don't ignore carbs, right? It's the right amount of carbs. But I think that has just gotten so out of hand, and people tend to get the knee-jerk reactions when it's like, when fat was bad, people were bragging about having a diet with only 10% fat. And I'm like, well, your body does need fat, and the same thing,
Mhm.
your body needs glucose. Your brain runs on glucose. Guess what glucose comes from, right?
The
Carbohydrates.
carbs, yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I try not to get, we don't, you know what? The big word for me going forward at this point in my life, and what I hope the message I get to others is balance, right?
Mhm.
You don't need to
Yes.
run a marathon, but you need to move. You don't need to be a heavyweight bodybuilding champion, but you do need to be strong. You don't need to be on a severe restrictive diet, but you do need to eat balanced.
Yeah. That's where we are.
Yeah.
Try to keep the balance. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going to go downstairs and make homemade ice cream when we get done so we can have it tonight for dessert. But
Oh, that's
it's just,
right.
yeah, at
Balance.
least I'm controlling what's going in it.
That's
Yeah.
true.
So,
You know the
yeah.
ingredients in your ice cream. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So,
gosh, this has been really interesting. Thank you so much, Kim, for
thank
taking the
you. I
time.
appreciate it.
Yeah, it's just, I love to hear people's stories, and you just seem, I love your feed on Instagram. And so I really wanted to introduce you to our audience. So thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you. And I equally like yours as well. It's a good feed, and I learned a lot of moves from Judy from watching her. So yeah.
Oh, thank you. Hey, where I can put your Instagram handle on in the show notes. Is there anything else you'd like for people to contact you if they wanted to message you? Should they do it through Instagram?
They can do it through Instagram. They can DM me. I'm for a good life after 50 on
Okay.
Instagram and Facebook. And then that's also the name of my website.
Okay.
So,
Beautiful. So that's easy. I'll put that in the show notes. Okay. Great.
thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you. What a pleasure it was listening to Kim and just learning how she navigated through her own situation. And the biggest takeaway message, I know we got off topic a little bit, which we like to do. We just like to let conversation flow. But the biggest takeaway message was that she trusted herself enough to go ahead and do the research and figure out what were the right questions to ask so that she could be satisfied with the treatment plan that was best for her. Anyways, thank you so much for listening today. This has been a delightful conversation, and as always, I appreciate your coming in and listening. Come on back next week for a new episode here on the Air Hug Community Podcast. And if you haven't left a review yet, please feel free to leave a review on Apple or Spotify or whatever podcast platform you are using that has the ability to give a review, because reviews are the lifeblood of podcasts. And it is my goal to get this podcast out to as many midlife people as possible so that we can continue to live a very fit, healthy, and joyous lifestyle.